It is my pleasure to introduce Lauren K. Alleyne for her first solo reading at James Madison University. Professor Alleyne joined us in August of this year as the Assistant Director of the Furious Flower Poetry Center. She was formerly an assistant professor of English and the poet in residence at the University of Dubuque in Iowa. And she held those positions for the last 6 years. With a varied and exciting career as a writer, educator, and administrator, since coming from Trinidad, Lauren has served as the coordinator of writing at the Weill Cornell Medical College in Qatar. She was the Picador Guest Professor in Literature at the University of Leipzig in Germany. And she was honored by the editors of the Ithaca Lit journal that named a contest after her. And the contest is the Lauren K. Alleyne Difficult Fruit Poetry Prize. Now, look at this woman. She is young. Old people get poetry prizes named after them. Her debut collection, Difficult Fruit, received honorable mention in the 2013 Cave Canem First Book Prize. And she is currently working on a second collection of poetry, tentatively entitled Without the World. Carolyn Forche says of her first book, quote, "There is uncommon spiritual knowledge here, as well as political discernment." In a passage from the poem 18, Professor Alleyne writes, "You believe happiness is the bearable vision of yourself, the woman who lives certain in her skin, the woman who walks unafraid, whose throat out-thunders thunder. Each day she unwinds the bright rope of her will, harnesses the hours of her pleasure. Her laughter is an open door, happy. Her heart empty of longing. Happy is her dreamless and uninvited sleep. She is a bullet, a bird, all things swift and light that ride on the wind. She will not turn. She will answer to no names but her own. She is entire. She makes herself wide, so nothing can hold her. She holds all inside. Would you join me in welcoming Lauren Alleyne, who will answer to no name but her own?
Thank you. I'm so excited and happy and honored to be here. As Dr. Gavin mentioned, I've been at JMU since August, and it's been a wonderful, welcoming few months, and I really want to thank you for that. I want to start, as I must, because one of the things that, I had to come up from my publisher with a elevator speech about what this book was. It was horrible having to do that, but I'm glad I did. And I said it was a woman making her way in the world and making the world as she makes her way. I liked all the W's, whatever. But I really try to think about what it means to be a self in the world, how to connect, and then to bring back inside, all the things that are going on. So with that in mind, that's one opening. The other is, I was in a workshop where A. Van Jordan, a wonderful poet, said there's at least 3 books in every book, depending on how the poems move. And so as I've been reading from Difficult Fruit for the last 2 years, I've had the fun of just seeing what books emerge by how I read the poems. And so I sort of let every place tell me where to begin. My best example of that was I was at a reading, and just that we were at this point, like I gave the stuff, the fire alarm went off. And so I said, I'm only reading poems that have fire. Who knew how much fire there was in this book? I had no idea until that reading. I was thinking about where I would start today for this reading. And funny enough, I have a poem that maybe describes a little bit my current mood. On the most depressing day of the year, January 24th, which is actually, somebody calculated that. It's been proven, they say, the bills like a line of ants, the glamour of the new year grown dull like a tin ring, the dark taking the sky like a curve, half the continent huddled into scarves and sneezes, the small engine of the brain sputters and coughs, spins the wheels of our brightness to no avail. My friend tells me she won't succumb, not this year, that she's armed with a gadget to simulate sunlight, to trick her neurons like hothouse flowers into defiant artificial bloom. It's her birthday, so I smile, but I can't stop the images in my own untreated head, dendrites sprouting threads like untended ivy, brewing storms of dopamine and serotonin, everything out of kilter, ready to blow. Her face looms over the cake, the candles spelling the years she has survived her own wild existence, a flaming sentence, an almost sun. Her eyes squint their wish and flutter, look at the light, disappear. So the way the whole reading things work, I sort of let the last line tell me what comes next. And thinking about the light disappearing, this next poem actually is an anomaly, I would say, in the book. I'm a reader. That's how you become a writer first, I think, right? And I had just read Jamaica Kincaid, who is my hero, her poem her collection, at the bottom of the river, which is a very strange collection of short stories. And it jangled something in me, and this poem happened. The Place of No Dreams, after Jamaica Kincaid. The place of no dreams is a cave so dark, every ghost shines with the luminescence of supernovas. Wish upon everyone, and you would want for nothing. The cave is a house with 7 windows and no doors. The house of no doors is not lacking an entryway. You have only to open your imagination. Sometimes a wall is a fear so old it has become brick. Sometimes a wall is a wish so fragile it would crumble if you uttered its name. The name is a ghost offering every possibility to the dark, a shining thing. The name is an echo, is a mirror, a corridor of clocks between now and no time. Now is a single drop of rain hurtling towards a river. The river runs like all rivers, on. At the mouth of the cave, in the belly of the house, at the edge of every hunger, the river runs on. Ghosts drink from it. So that's my creepy, surreal After Jamaica Kincaid poem. This book is concerned a lot with ideas of loss. There are elegies, which are poems of loss. And the next poem is sort of that, the ghost idea. It really follows it in the collection. I am from Trinidad and Tobago, which is in the Caribbean. And people may not know, Trinidad is 44% Black, African, 44% East Indian, and then like 12% of everybody else. And so this was an East Indian friend of mine from high school who passed away, and this poem is for her. How it touches us. Our teacher trembled at the board as she unraveled the snarl of events, exhaustion, a nap, the sickening realization. Our friend was in a coma. We gawked at lunchtime around Anjani's desk, shuddered at her calm as she loaded up the insulin, flicked the needle, and slipped it beneath her skin into its live blue tracks. I remember thinking I couldn't bear to live like that. But day after day, when her chair remained empty, I prayed she would come back to her body. Once we'd worked together on a project about the universe and its parts, planets, stars, atmosphere, black holes. I couldn't remember which of us had kept it afterward. The whole class went to the funeral, young and somber in our crisp collars and dark overalls. We shuffled past the coffin where she lay white-faced and red-lipped as a doll. The pyre waited at the river, its rough frame wreathed like a wedding car with marigolds and loud red hibiscus. Our teacher said we didn't have to, but we followed her into the crowd gathered on the bank. The fire flung sparks like little stars. When the pundit lit the torch to the wood, her mother's wails rose, first a tired thread, then heavier in thick, tangled knots of grief. When her body moved, I was unafraid. I thought we would witness a miracle, that she'd get up and walk through those flames, grinning. But the motion was mechanical, her muscles stirring as the tendons and ligaments contracted, a reaction to the heat. That was all. No act of God, no resurrection. Instead, the bang, her skull shattering, no longer able to contain her brain as it expanded. The awful realization that all laws of matter must hold true, and she was gone. So when I want to get my students to readings, I say, brain's going to explode, and that going to get you there? I don't know. Also, this poem happened when I worked at a medical school, because I really had that image in my head of what had happened, and never occurred to me to look it up, and they were talking about stuff one day, and I asked them, and they gave me the explanation that made the poem happen. So I'm an immigrant. I'm from Trinidad. Like I said, I came to the United States in 1997 to study radiologic science and nuclear medical technology, and that clearly worked out. And I, again, in this sort of atmosphere of what it means to come, to leave home, or to come somewhere, or why someone would come, I wrote a lot of the poems in this book as letters, and this one is to my godmother, who was one of the first people I knew who went to America. We didn't see her very much after that. Letter to Auntie Patsy. I can hear your laugh, the breathlessness you'd clamp your hand around, your shoulders working up and down like wings. You were my first lavish crush. The promise of summers in your new country dulled the edge of your leaving for America, where everything was made and it snowed. For years we yelled, "Bye-bye, Auntie Patsy," every time a plane passed over the house, those mysterious birds, night's unsteady stars. Now I am here in the country I labeled yours before you disappeared. Before the envelopes, their stamps like trails, stopped brightening the mailbox, and birthday bills tucked into singing cards no longer made their way to our piggy banks, gone, the hearts above the flourish of your name. For 2 decades, I have imagined you here, your face hidden behind the Times on the subway, your fingers dropping change into every hungry cup. Before you left, you whirled me around the living room until we collapsed, giggling. We chanted the months till I would come to you like prayers. I know you've saved our pictures. You wait and wait for me to find you. So one of the things that you get to do if you're a poet is talk to yourself. Because, they say if you do it out loud, you get committed. If you do it in a poem, you get published, right? So There is a series of age poems in this collection, and I will read the first one that happened, which is 7. I was going to a writing residency. I was going to Yaddo, and my first communion album fell on my head while I was packing, and because I'm me, I was like, oh, this is clearly a sign. I threw it in a suitcase, whatever. And then I found it again when I was unpacking there, and I was looking through it, and I thought, man, that chick. And so I wrote a letter to my 7-year-old self, which I will read next, but that spawned all of these letters. You should write to yourself. It's very, very useful. This first one, though, I'm going to read is 14. And the only setup I want to say for this is just remember being 14 when all you want in the world is to be grown. Just want to be grown. 14. How the bud yearns to flower, believing that bloom is all beauty, perfuming the bliss of pluck. How she knows nothing of uprooting, the constraints of glass, the burden of perpetual brightening. When she blossoms in her dreams, she is only the full rose of herself, free at last from the inconvenient root. How she strains against her greenness, prays for the day a hand will lift her away. Ah, Rose, let us not tell her of wither. Let her turn her best face to the sky. So, I told an untruth. 7 comes later. So again, the poems try to go between like things like that, super personal, and opening up a little bit to the world. And I think this next poem, which has a weird title, I don't remember why I called it what I called it, but it tries to wrestle with that idea of what it means to be in the world, right? Which is one of the things you navigate as a grown person. Adulting is hard. If sky. Wish for a working machine and you're given a body. Ask for options and you get a life with no roadmap and free will. Say, give me a reason, and what you get is silence, or wars, continents too far away to care without exertion. If you say yes to knowing, dispossession flowers in you and cleaves to your progeny for centuries. If you wish to forget, there are pills with mild side effects, dreams that grab you by the throat, and pockets of fear that separate you from your skin. If you sing hymns, the gods of memory might waken and strike you with elegies for your unguarded heart. Ask for love, and the sky will unveil itself, layer by layer, its naked blue flame wanting only your blindness in return. 7. In this picture, your dress is burning white. Your veil engulfs your head like lacy flames. Your Snoopy watch flares red on your wrist. You clutch your white handbag like a wish. Little Christ bride, you are innocence embodied down to your white knee socks, Mary Janes, and unpierced ears. Your parents are stiff with pride, their afros not yet streaked white with worry. Behind you, your godmothers hold fast to their vows and your shoulders, Nanny George alive and beaming, Auntie Patsy whispering into your ear, real as the statue of Mary in the background. Everything in this moment is true, but even truth is not impervious to time, and we lose so much. Even this day's memories will thin and disappear. But perhaps you already sense this, the anticipation already giving way to something else you cannot name, as you solemnly wait to be captured, bending your smile into the camera's light. I was like, what is that look, little girl? I was just guessing. So one of the hearts of this collection is, again, another. I realize, of course, in hindsight, that the age and the letters were sort of a way to get to these sort of critical points. And this one poem, actually, there are 2 poems by the title of 18, and I'm going to read them both, which I never do, but y'all, I felt like I needed to. So 18. Here is the night snarled with stars. Here is the smile full of teeth. Here is the bloom of desire, its scent swift entering everything. Here the arms, the legs, the heady nectar of lips. Here is nipple erupting against the thicketed chest. Here is earlobe and thigh, the sharp seduction of nails. Here is naked. Here light by an exploring moon. Here is heat making a new planet of your heart, riding your blood like victory. Here is the old road you have longed and longed to travel. It hisses your name, its breath is smoke and salt, it stings your throat like a scream. Here is the trembling gate, and yet you want to turn no run back to before, which is still now, or could be, if you turn in time and you do, but here are the knots fists make of fingers, the silence one tongue can shackle to another, the willful iron of belly and bone. Here is no, and no answer. Here, shove and bite splinter like so much kindling. Here is his laughter sparking mad. Jackal, wildebeest, wolf. Here is fire and fire and fire. Skins of flame, walls of flame. There is no turning here. 18. Here you learn how to burn. So I always feel like I called it difficult fruit, so it's not a surprise. I'm sorry, I know these are not necessarily uplifting, but I said it right. I told you in the title. And so it's just like the disclaimer is here. I lived in New York. I went to school in New York City, and I had just left for graduate school in Iowa in the fall of 2001, and I had the horror of watching 9/11 happen on TV when I worked in City Hall and had friends who were in the towers. And I wrote a lot of really horrible 9/11 poems. And I think maybe this is a lesson for today too. I think the problem with all of them now was that I was really trying to define what happened. I was trying to make a statement. And I realized at some point, maybe actually because of workshop exercise, that I didn't have answers. I had questions. And so this poem is entirely questions. Grief etches its silver into our days, singing. What do the living owe the dead? What tribute? What memory? What kingdom? What time? What flesh? What fiction? What will? What mourning? What missiles? What flag? What dust? What patriotism? What purging? What tears? What wick and wax and wavering light? What vigils? What sirens? What capital? What codes? What questions? What mercy? What protest? What burning? What God? What terror? What blood? What wrath? What drafts? What suicide? What occupation? What pipelines? What desert? What hate? What brotherhood? What target? What bomb? What dignity? What sacrifices to their lingering ghosts? What stakes to scorch the guilty? What guilt? What pleading? What prisoners? What speeches? What revolution? What marches? What jury? What freedom? What is left for us to give them? What constitution? What tower do you wait in, O nation of martyrs? What anthem to salute you? What convoy? What genocide? What soldier? What search? What hidden silver? What hostage? What amber alert? What bare feet? What debt? What deliverance? What promises to be kept and which to be broken? What purpose? What redemption? What history? What ritual? What bridges? What answer? What love? What love? What living do we owe our dead? So I think one answer to that is to tell the truth. And the truth is maybe a little bit strong, your truth. And the next poem I'm going to read is an attempt to do that, like everybody else who wasn't living under a rock. The Trayvon Martin case was present in our culture around the world in some cases. And, I was looking at all of the conversation and the back and forth and all of this stuff. And I always say the only reason this poem even made it into the book was because of the sort of gross miscarriages of justice. But the hoodie became this symbol, right? I was trying to think of a way into the poem because there was so much feeling. A theme you will see recur later. And I guess the idea of symbol was really interesting to me, right? Because I think what had happened was this thing had been used to flatten a person, right, a kid. And I thought, well, symbols can also do the other thing, right? They can add depth. They can give us a way into some larger narrative perspective, in this case, life. And so this poem is "The Hoodie Stands Witness" for Trayvon Martin. I was built for bodies like his, between boy and man, sauntering in angles he couldn't hold, but swung his limbs from, careful, cool in every step. I can tell you the story of him, unexceptional. He put change and candy into my pockets, the necessary jangle of keys and cell phone hushed in the sock of me. I watched him from the soft pile he made of me on the floor of his messy adolescent room, where I lay beside his sneakers and backpack. He did his homework with chat windows open. White headphones hooked him into some steady beat. That day, he was thinking of nothing in particular. He was quiet in his skin, tucked into the shade of me. He was an easy embrace until an old ancestral fear lay its white shadow across us like an omen. I can tell you his many hairs raised in warning beneath me. His armpits funked me up with terror. His saunter slipped into a child's unsteady totter under the weight of a history staggering behind him, mad with its own power. He clung to me then, wholly unmanned, a baby clutching his blankie. He pulled me close, and I stroked his head, caressed the naps he had brushed to waves that morning. I felt him brace his bones beneath me, his heart 1,000 beating drums. The bullet ripped through us like a bolt of metal lightning. His blood, losing its purpose, ran into me, and I wished we were truly a single body, that I could have held its rush and flow like a second sweaty skin. I can tell you how his spirit slipped out, like steam from cooling water, slowly, fading by degrees, until he stilled. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna drink some water. So this is the other 18 poem, as you might have intuited from the first one. When in my first year of college, I was assaulted by a dude I thought was really hot. And there are two things. One, there's a book by Francis Driscoll called The Rape Poems, which you probably have never heard of, probably because that's what it's called. It should be required reading for everybody in the world. And I think one of the ways that I started to even think about or process many, many years later what had happened was I saw that book on my friend's bookshelf. I stole it, whatever. I sent her a new one. But I literally couldn't let it go. I needed that object. I needed all of the words that she put together that helped me figure out what all had happened. And so this epigraph is with thanks to Francis Driscoll for the word. The other thing is that these are, unlike the first one, which is pretty short, this is a crown of 10 sonnets. Form helps you find your way, I discovered. And so what that means is you'll hear the last line of one recur as the beginning line of another in some form. 18. Tonight, you are full of small rivers, your eyes salty runoff, the rust-bright trickle staining your thigh, the unnameable, undammed flooding in your chest. You are drowning in all of them. Sweet girl, of course you do not have the words. It will take you almost 10 years to find them. They are both more powerful and less useful than you can believe in this night when your hands and faith have failed you, when your mouth is an absence of screams. Some rivers are wider than any courage. I give you nothing as you sink alone under those waters. This is how I am born. Under those waters you labor to birth me. For days you are dead to alarms, knocks, rings, messages with their battery of concern and questions you have no answer for. You have made yourself impenetrable to insistence with sleep's shadowy armor, with a silence that consumes all sound whole. You are beyond the world's reach, which is one kind of safety. I can only imagine that bodiless place, its darkness like a sweetness in the mouth. The secrets you learned there delivered me, your miracles scream, your dark voice. Together we left that realm of smoke, returned to this country of blood, awoke. You wake up, but you can never return. No matter what country you burden with dreams of home, if there are rivers, if blood or tears or time flow there, if memory lives or is buried there, if leaving was your own doing, if you were captured or borrowed or lost, if the doors were open wide or if you pried them, if there are doors or doorways, your name is not a key. Return has no means in any language, no lines around it on any map. To go back is a verb conjugated in dreams that dissolves on your tongue when you wake up reaching for it. You seek a different debt. Choose a different peace. Your verb, to forget. And you forgot. You moved through your days easy, with lightness that was not untrue. You lifted weights and danced. You biked and ran. You moved and moved, never still long enough for your shadow to settle. You visited familiar countries, not quite the same as returning, made home the body's wild contours. You wore short skirts and spiky heels. You held bottles to your mouth, sparked fire to your face, learned to suck the smoke in and feel it swirling there next to your heart. You defied sleep, worked the late shift at bars instead of dreaming. You kept your eyes open, your gaze fixed ahead on the slippery horizon. Oh, slippery horizon. Seeming fixed just within reach is your most perfect trick. You keep us going by it. Hang your dazzle like the perfect carrot we chomp and chomp towards you. When you're bright enough, we need never look behind. Who wants to reach back when the future beckons, a kept promise? 18, you know everything is at stake. Your possible life, hopes of making good you long to realize, some nagging truth, your sanity, pride. It is not a choice, this horizon, but a bearable path. We have faith in the signs saying, this way to happiness, you are closer each day. You believe happiness is the bearable vision of yourself, the woman who lives certain in her skin, the woman who walks unafraid, whose throat out-thunders thunder. Each day she unwinds the bright rope of her will, harnesses the hours for her pleasure. Her laughter is an open door. Happy, her heart empty of longing. Happy is her dreamless and unvisited sleep. She is a bullet, a bird, all things swift and light that ride on wind. She will not turn. She will answer to no name but her own. She is entire. She makes herself wide so nothing can hold her. She holds all inside. We hold all 18, but not everything dies because we believe burial and end. Something waits to make gardens of us, to wreath us with quiet thorns. It grows fat and bursts its skin in us, thrives on our rivers, it waits in our dark. It sets down roots, long fingers probing the earth of us. It breaks free and breathes the air of us. It reaches for our light. 18, it creeps around our paths, it thickens, it clings. Inside our bodies, something always waits to disappear, to burn, or to startle us with bloom. It unfolds obscene flowers. A doom of petals litters us, our breath, their fragrance heavy, bitter. For years, they scent our daily air, heavy. Breath after breath, we press on, the story ripening in us, its eyes looking through ours in the mirror. We have not seen our face without its shadow for almost 10 years, and now this. In a class on violence against women, the professor prophesies this moment. It will come, she says, for anyone who has suffered trauma. We do not believe we are anyone until we are sobbing for the night the boy you liked held you down and made you bleed. Again, the rivers. But this time I come bearing a word, rape. We cling to the raft of it, begin our escape. In the raft of language, we begin our escape. We hold ourselves tightly inside it, whisper its single syllable like a spell. The word means it was not your fault for liking him, for kissing him, for leaning into the touch he pressed against your shoulders, despite your desire, despite the first thrill. The word means you said no too, and that matters. The word tells you you were not being punished by God. The word means you were not weak, not stupid, not damned. You were a victim, not a tease, not a cautionary tale or a moral. This is what a word can give. Definition. Meaning, the closest we can get to salvation. Meaning is the closest we get to salvation, which is to say, the word changes nothing. It does not unmake the rivers, cannot erase them from the landscape of us. Spells have their limits, which is to say, return means too late to be saved in any language. The longing is to be pure. What you get is to be changed. 18, we will carry our dark. We will birth ourselves again and again. We will tend our gardens, harvest the difficult fruit. We will apprentice ourselves to the work and learn the language that will allow us to summon our own angels. We survive. We go on. We cross those rivers. We live. Thank you. Okay, I have a little more time than I planned, so I'm going to read something fun. Also in parts. So I do a lot of writing residencies. I was at one in Wyoming, and there were 4 women and 2 men, and somehow on movie night, we wound up watching Rambo 5. To make that worth my life, I wrote a poem. Kind of culling from all of the personalities in the room. It was really fun. Letters to John Rambo. 1. Dear Rambo, after all these years, you're back. The muscles in your forearm bulging as ever, the asymmetry of your face, its trademark scowl, the rusty grate of your voice reminding us you're a man who understands words don't matter if you speak kick-ass. 2. Dear Rambo, you've seen it all. The way the body empties like an ice tray, the bullet's kiss so clean it could break your heart, the crimson fountain a wound makes, wondrous in its puncture and spurt. Beautiful, wouldn't you say? 3. Dear Rambo, you've pushed your own body past the recognizable limits, the machine of your fist and eyes sleek and practiced, ready to fire on command. I know a man who died from cellular mutiny, the cancer conquering organ after organ until every cell turned renegade, ignored the ceasefire he cried out in his sleep, but you must never worry about such things. 4. Dear Rambo, if I ever paint you, it would be clay on canvas. I'd put a fence in the center right where your heart would be. I'd sketch your face and cover it with sand. You'd be invisible. I bet you'd like that. I'd add something to your portrait every couple of years, so rest assured there will always be a sequel. 5. Dear Rambo, I'm so jealous of your metabolism. I bet you never have to count calories and can drink as much whiskey as you want. 6. Dear Rambo, the last time I saw you, I must have been 10. You were hot then, but now my heart is well behaved and does not even twitch at the sight of you. I assume this means one of us has grown too old. 7. Dear John, we've known each other our whole lives. I know nothing phases you. Tomorrow, suspend disbelief. Tomorrow I will be 29, and frankly, John, I'm scared. Tell me, what is the secret of fearlessness? I am going to end with, I was telling Greg earlier, I don't approve of writing poems then reading them, but I wrote a poem that I'm going to read literally at 6 a.m. I'm a writer. The only way I know how to deal with stuff is to write things. After a talk with the wonderful Joanne Gabin and my colleagues at Furious Flower yesterday, when I was perhaps distraught, would be putting it kindly, I thought, how do I write myself back into myself? And seriously, at 6 o'clock this morning, I was like, I've got it. Ode to the Pantsuit. You thought yourself retired, lounging unused in the back of 70s feminist closets or retro thrift shop racks in all your iterations. Jackets, shoulder-padded, double-breasted, collars sculpted into every shape of wing, embracing your namesake boxy or slim-legged bottoms. Pantsuit, you thought your work was done. You thought to retire, having served us well, we women who donned you like armor and strode proudly into spaces too spiked for dresses, too fragile for the curve of leg you held with such ease. You cloaked us with confidence, the cape to every superheroine wanting to kick in a glass ceiling. You were the anti-cute, unflattering, a revolution with functional pockets. Draped in you, unladylike one, we slipped minds first into a world that believed us hollow. How you held our softness secret, shielded our vulnerable with your badass. Grab deflector, pussy protector. Pantsuit, you stayed with us, evolving as we did into weaponized, power-suited style, blossoming into separates, daring silk camisoles, frilled blouses, before long, skirts again. That must have been a blow. But oh, Pantsuit, you understood. Perhaps, like so many of us, you thought the battle over. Victory, if not immediate, then inevitable. You let your hems up, your guard down. We believed you relic, symbolic. Named 2016 the year of your resurrection, we named you a nation on Facebook, and ourselves your ecstatic citizens. We pranced our pantsuited joy. Perhaps, like some of us, you always suspected this betrayal. The quirky reenactment turned final battle, the enemy returned, hydra-headed, fanged and multitudinous, and you, sweet suit, mere thread and dream against it. Perhaps the two-pieced double consciousness of you always knew you might not emerge uncreased. Still, I salute you, Pantsuit. Vow to dust the dirt from your war-torn seams, pull you on, pull myself through, pantsuit up, and remember the truth we always knew. You, Pantsuit, are only as powerful as the body that bears you. Thank you. I think I take questions now.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Now you have the wonderful pleasure of asking Lauren whatever question you may have about her work. Who would like to be first?
As you know, I'm all about the questions.
Well, I will ask one to start. Tell us about what you're writing now.
You mean now? No.
After the pantsuit.
After the pantsuit.
Yeah.
So I'm working on a book that has to do, well, it kind of evolved. As Joanne mentioned, I have a tentative title, Without the World, which really was the tentative title of this book. I think it just might be my tentative title for everything. But I'm thinking about what it means to be in a place and from a place. I'm calling it my tip year. I've been in the States for 18 years, and I left Trinidad when I was 18, right? So I'm tipping over into, my mom gets really annoyed when I say, when I get back home, she's like, you are home. I'm like, right, I'm home. I'm home when I go back to my other place in the States where I've lived, like, right? And so thinking about how place and space and that idea of travel helps us figure out who we are, how it shapes us. At first I was like, I'm gonna write a happy book now. I thought I'm gonna write a travel book about all the places I've been to, 26 countries. I got off the island and I went for it. But it's turned into a little bit more than that, about ideas of identity and how place and experience in place kind of shapes that.
Thank you. Yes, Greg.
Lauren, I was wondering, this seems like a really relevant question given
The world.
what's unraveling. But what do you see as a poet's responsibility to her society?
Yeah, I usually ask people that question, Greg, and they hate me. No. I mean, I think it's a question we wrestle with. I wish I liked legal things and I could be a lawyer and do things, but I'm a poet. I work with language, and I think that's important. And so, what can a poem do? You know, every few years in the poetry community, it's like, poetry's dead. No, poetry's not dead. Look, poetry's dead. No, it's not dead, right? Poor thing. But I think for us, the work is to keep language flexible, to resist the idea that we must fall into the trap of a language that doesn't evolve with us, that we say what things can mean, what they might mean. I think what we get to do is imagine. I think the realm of the imagination, and I think that's a lot what Jamaica Kincaid, that poem I wrote to her, was thinking about, right? What we get to do is see the thing and then see what might be behind the thing, and then see what the world might look like if that thing were moved or somewhere else, or if it were a different thing altogether, right? That we can't necessarily do with physical space, but that's what the space of the imagination is for. And so we are imagination athletes. That's what poems do. And that's what we can offer, I think. A window to the internal, and a way to then a channel that those things can get into the world in one sort of tangible way that hopefully people can run with. There. I don't know if that answers her question.
Someone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Lori.
Your work is so incredibly musical, and so my question is kind of related to process.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in whether that music just comes to you as you're drafting and writing, and or how much you have to sort of go back in your draft to bring the music in and play it, and that this is like a finished question.
Yeah.
But because your work is so incredibly musical, I'm really interested in how that happens and how that comes to you.
Thank you for the compliment. One of the things that popped into my head, I was like, my 10 years of piano lessons paid off, because I suck at the piano, but I do think I have an ear for music. And I do work with how a poem sounds. So I was nervous today because I was like, oh my God, I thought Karen was gone, but I was muttering to myself. The Pantsuit poem, right? Because the sound of the poem does, for me, carry me to the next line. So it is a composition or a generational tool, right? Like, I kind of hear what might come next before I know what might come next. And then sometimes it helps me when I'm revising, if I'm like, that is missing a beat, or it doesn't sound right, and then you have the opportunity. One of Tracy Smith, a friend of mine, and I was in a workshop with her, and she gave us this really neat trick of trying to replace a word in a poem with another word that sounds like it, that might then sort of open up the poem. I'm trying to think of an example, but I can't. But yeah, just that idea of using sound and the sonic element. I mean, poems live in so many dimensions, right? And I think it is oral first, and well, not first, I shouldn't say first, but its roots are. And so that sound is integral to, and plus, you know, we respond to music as people. It's the reason I almost got a cockatoo. They and us, we dance. And so I think that paying attention to how sound travels into the inner space of us is important to a poem.
Okay, we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Would someone else like to ask? Can I jump in again? Do you want to talk about your travels? You said you've been to 26 countries.
I can.
Yeah,
I mean,
Does it
it's not like
influence your writing? I guess
this,
that's
if it
what-
influences my writing. I would say it hadn't until I went to Greece a couple, well, not so couple. 2011, I got a fellowship when I was on the island of Seraphos for a month. And I think part of the reason place has not so far, apart from, of course, the United States, influenced my writing is because I haven't been in a place for super long, you know. I travel, like, you know, I do a week here or whatever, but like if you stay somewhere for a long period of time, and a month is long enough if you're just there to write and sort of be, then you can pick up on the images of that place and the sounds of that place and the rhythms of that place. And I would say a poet's job is to pay attention. And so for me, getting, if not even directly, like I'm not a poem about Paris, but something about the sound, the smell, something I saw that I might scribble down or stack away, that might have happened in that place. And often that could only happen in that place, was, you know, I have something in my head. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I was in Germany last spring for a semester, and I was on the tram, and I looked out, and there was a woman in a wheelchair holding the hand of a tall man. He's walking and she's wheeling, and they were clearly in love, and they were talking and so happy. And I was just like, you know, and I looked at it as it passed, and they were sort of skipping along in their own world, and people are sort of kind of looking because, you know, he's not pushing her, and she's not focused. She wants to hold his hand, but the other hand is like furiously working the wheel, and that's just stuck, you know. And so I kind of have it in my head, a bookmark, Leipzig, Germany, 2015, you know, who knows if it'll show up somewhere. But I think that's, and Carolyn Forcher, when we were in Greece, made us do this. And maybe that's part of why Greece shows up. She's like, document. So keep an image notebook. Write your sight, sound, smells, taste, hearing. I'm helping a friend edit a manuscript, Samantha, and she has an octopus poem from Greece, you know, and I was just like, oh man, I remember eating that octopus, and because she wrote it so well. So I think that's what travel can do. But you don't have to go somewhere to do that either. You know, you can stare out that window for a couple hours and get plenty of stuff if you look long enough. So, yeah.
I'm going to make two announcements. Think of your final question. Ask a good one. Number one, Professor Alleyne is teaching a course.
Yes.
Starting to teach at JMU next semester. What is the class?
Intro to Poetry, is that what it's called? Poetry, Creative Writing, Intro to Creative Writing, Poetry. Monday, Wednesday, 4 to 5:15, verse 36. I didn't know that I knew that.
And the other thing is, if you're here as part of the passport program, we'll be stamping at the back door back there. It will be ending promptly at 5. Yeah, Hannah's got the stamps. She's waving back there. Yes, go ahead.
I want to thank Karen Mishmat, who's been our commentator here for the question and answer period.
Yeah, thank you. And makes all the magic happen.
And then I want you to thank, in a rousing way, because this is her first rock star appearance at Furious Flower and the wonderful James Madison University. So would you show her how much you enjoyed this fantastic reading?
They like it. Thank you so much.